next guest. Our next guest speaker is a social activist, deeply involved in environment and climate changes. When I was looking through his biography, I was very interested in when I saw one point where he was working in solidarity with the farmers movement in Telangana. അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഒരാള് എന്തുകൊണ്ടും ഇന്ന് അദ്ദേഹത്തിന് പറ്റിയൊരു വേദിയാണിത്. He has, let me introduce him some more. He has authored the books and articles. ഒത്തിരി പുസ്തകങ്ങൾ എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. കുറച്ച് പുസ്തകങ്ങൾ ഏതൊക്കെയാണെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ലിംഗസമത്വം, കാലാവസ്ഥാ വ്യതിയാനം, പിന്നെ തൊഴിലാളി പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ, ഇതിനെപ്പറ്റിയൊക്കെ അദ്ദേഹം പുസ്തകങ്ങൾ എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. We are extremely happy to have such an eminent person on our stage, and I welcome Brother Varughese Theckanath, and he is from Hyderabad.
Thank you very much for making me a part of Amma's Indian Republic Day celebrations. I consider it a very rare honor to be joining a very distinguished panel to celebrate this occasion. Let me begin by wishing all those organizing this event and participating in these celebrations, the members of the association, especially Mr. Dominic Chakonel, the president of Amma, who invited me. Wish you all a very happy Republic Day. Friends, today marks the 64th day of our farmers' protest. Hundreds of thousands of them are in agitation. They are not only on the borders of Delhi, but also elsewhere in the country. It has been a very peaceful protest until, as the other speaker mentioned, on the Republic Day, when a group of them deviated from the agreed route to reach the Red Fort to host the Nishan Sahib, the Sikh religious flag, on the ramparts of the Red Fort. There are very serious allegations of state complicity in allowing this to happen. Since then, there has been violence on the Singhu border. There has been dramatic happenings in the Ghazipur border. There has been other events that have been happening elsewhere. In spite of such setbacks, what is it that holds the farmers together, not only in the northern states of India, but elsewhere in the country? This is a very puzzling question. To me, it has to do with the deep distress the farmers everywhere are faced. Farmers everywhere face. While 10,357 farmers and agricultural workers committed suicide in the year 2018, as many as 10,281 of them ended their lives last year, the year before, that is 2019. The newly enacted farm laws, they fear, will not only pauperize them further, but will hurt their pride in their self-reliance and autonomy. The government, on the other hand, talks about more income and freedom from government-controlled mandi culture, the government-controlled market culture. The contents of the laws have been discussed a great deal over the last 2 months. It talks about the freedom of the farmers to sell their products outside the government-regulated markets. They talk about contract farming, and they talk about the deregulation of essential commodities that threaten to make food and other commodities unaffordable, especially for the most vulnerable people in our country. Farmers are asking for the repeal of these laws they consider are based on faulty assumptions and are draconian in their contents. As Fabian Saab already quoted one example of how draconian these laws are. They are asking the government to offer them a legally guaranteed minimum price for their crops. They are demanding that the agricultural reform laws are drafted in consultation with them, because these laws affect their very existence as farmers. I shall not dwell any further on the contents of the laws themselves for paucity of time, But at this Republic Day, when we celebrate the Constitution of India, that constitutes the nation, our nation, into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, the farmers' agitation is a landmark event to measure how far we have achieved or whether we have regressed on these ideals that we set ourselves on 26th of January 1950 through our constitution. The way the executive and the parliament went about their responsibility of lawmaking, the role of the opposition and the media, and how the people of this nation that gave ourselves the constitution as the guiding light of our country have behaved in the process is a mighty indicator as to where we stand today. And this is what I really want to talk about. Let me begin with the government and the parliament. India is in the thick of a pandemic. Images of millions of migrant workers walking back hundreds of kilometers to their villages. The law enforcement authorities struggling to implement the lockdown rules, and the struggles of the medical personnel to bring succor to the ailing and the isolated are still fresh in our minds. It is in the midst of such an acute distress that the government of India came up with the farm laws, first in the form of ordinances and then on 20th September as legislations. The Honorable President signed them into laws within a week, that was on 27th September. The laws passed without due process, such as the consultation among the stakeholders and sufficient debate in Parliament necessary for consensus building, is, I consider, a new law in the functioning of our parliamentary democracy. The assumption of the government seems to have been that, considering the spread of the pandemic, people will not organize themselves to protest. It is this very assumption that has been belied, I think, by the farmers' agitation. They have said loud and clear that death is better than slavery. But even more dangerously for the nation, the corporate bias of the state, the arrogance of electoral success, and the dictatorial impulses of powers that be stand exposed by this agitation. These tendencies, I consider, are the greatest danger to the future of our republic. What is the role of the opposition, or what has been the role of the opposition in this whole context? This is indeed a very critical time in the history of India, when a right-wing exclusive ideology, politics, and narrative is sweeping across the country. The values of liberty, equality, and fraternity of all that drove the freedom struggle was able to resist the advances of this ideology so far. It is these very values that were captured by the Constitution that we celebrate today. But unfortunately, the political parties that captured the spirit of the freedom movement seem to have relapsed into a deep slumber. The current farmers' agitation was a critical opportunity for the opposition parties to reinvent themselves. But as many critics say, the opposition seems to have taken a long vacation, giving a free pass to the government. For the first time since the last 7 years since NDA government came to power, the government is on its back foot as never before. And yet it is able to get away with harmful policies and laws. Today more than ever before, we need a polity and political parties that can invent and innovate a different game plan to offset the current dominant political culture. The country needs leaders who have the courage of conviction and the passion necessary to capture the imagination of people. But what do we have? We have a very deep political vacuum, or at best, we have imitators and pretenders. This brings me to the role of the media in the farmers' protest. Media in any democracy is its backbone. It is at the heart of the democratic society. It is the independence, courage, and conviction of many in their ranks in the past that has helped India sail through times that were most difficult. The emergency, for instance, was one such instance. Unfortunately, today, much of the mainstream media in India seem to have lost the courage to stand up and speak truth to power. Their main role today seems to be one of latching on to things of least consequence, such as the Sushant Singh suicide, rather than contributing to building a democratic polity. Anyone who opposes the government and the ideology of the ruling party are stamped anti-national. Much of the mainstream media has been parroting such a rhetoric of the government. That is what the media said when students protested against CAA and the NRC last year. That is what the media said when Father Stan Swami and many others took a stand along the marginalized Adivasis, Dalits, women, and other oppressed people in the country. That is what the media is saying today against the farmers who feed our country. They discredit farmers as being misguided, politically instigated, so much so the farmers had to invent a media of its own. In the process, the media has failed its constitutional responsibilities and I think has failed the nation. Finally, I come to the true heroines and heroes of our democracy, we the people, with which the preamble of the Constitution begins. The magnificent way our people have risen to every occasion when the democratic ethos and constitutional values are at stake has been exemplary in the past. The farmers' agitation once again bears ample witness to it. The determination and resolve of the farmers braving through one of the coldest winters of Delhi and bearing the pain of the many deaths, including suicides, they have shown the nation that people are willing to stand by the nation and to protect the rights enshrined in the Constitution. Today, as many said, remember Gandhi on his martyrdom day. He gave up his life at the altar of an ideology based on exclusion, discrimination, and social hierarchy. Remembering this day in the context of the farmers' agitation and the Republic Day is, I think, inviting us to recommit ourselves to the fundamentals of our nationhood. As the preamble to the Constitution says, it is about securing to all citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and fraternity that assures the dignity of the individual and the unity of the nation. As Theckanath Tagore was quoted by the President of Amma, I concluded with his words, "Into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake." Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.